Hi, I'm Mercedes Fobb here at the Captured on Canvas studio. Welcome to Picture This. For today's painting, picture this. It's a beautiful fall day at the pumpkin patch. We have a red barn framed by a colorful fall tree. Before we get started, we'll make sure we have all of our supplies in front of us. Most importantly, on my easel, I have a blank 16 by 20 canvas that is going to be my masterpiece. On my palette, I'm going to have a lot of colors today. I'm going to have a lot of white, some green, teal, red, black, I like to call this mustard yellow, and a brown. For our paintbrushes, I'm going to use these four today. My large square tip, my medium-sized angular brush, tiny one for round or small detail, and I like to call this one the bad hair day. And don't forget to have a cup of water and paper towels for cleaning those brushes. To get started, I always like to start with the background and paint the closest thing last. That being said, I'm going to start with that nice blue sky. Since it's a large area, I'm going to use my large square tip brush and mix that light sky blue color. I'm going to start with a big scoop of white in the middle of my palette. I want it to be at least the size of a quarter, if not more. Then I'm going to take some of that teal, corner my brush, and mix that in. Always trying to keep it in a nice little pile. All right, so that's about the shade I'm going to go with there. I'm going to start from the top of my canvas, going all the way across. And now's the time to think if you're going to paint your sides or not. I always like to paint my sides because it makes it look more complete. So you want to do that as you go with this step. And then as I come down, I might just give it a little bit of an arch. So I want this sky to fade into a little bit of a lighter white sky. All right, so now that I have that blue, I'm going to go ahead and just wipe off my brush on the side of my palette. I don't need to clean it, but I'm going to dip right into the white to get that nice blend between that teal, or that sky blue, with the white of my canvas. I'm going to start with a long brush stroke all the way across, a couple times, and then I'm going to start overlapping with that sky blue. And that finishes our sky. Let's make sure we clean off our brushes. All right, the next part, we're jumping right into it. We're gonna start with that big red barn that is gonna be off to the left side here, standing really tall. I'm first gonna start with that maroon color, and with that red, I'm just gonna take a little bit of black and mix that in. Keeping nice little circles again. And you can choose how dark you want that barn to be. Just adding a little bit at a time. All right. Now with drawing, I always like making dots, so it's really easy to just connect them. So I'm going to start with a dot for how low I want the barn to be on the bottom of my canvas. I'm going to say probably about 4 to 5 inches up. And I'm going to draw the bottom of my barn going straight over. I'd say I want it about 1/3 from the right side of my canvas. So the best you can, draw that straight line across and stop. Now I'm going to decide how tall I want that wall of my barn. I want it to be maybe just above halfway up on my canvas. If you want to make a mark there, you can. Otherwise, just draw your line and stop once you feel like you got a good height there. Now the roof. Barns are always difficult to get that extra angle. So I have a little shortcut that makes it, I believe, a lot easier. First, I'm going to start with that tallest peak of my barn here, and I'd say it's about 1/4 from the left side, and it's going to be maybe 3 to 4 inches, 4 fingers down from the top. Just make a dot there. That's going to be the tallest point of my roof. Then I'm just going to make it a basic house, connecting from this dot down to the right and mirroring that angle off to the left, and continue that around the edge of the canvas as well. Now we have that little extra peak. That extra one is just halfway up this angle here, so I just start with a dot, and I'm going to go out maybe the width of my brush. Just draw a little line that's about the width of your brush. Then I can connect from here out to there, back down to here. And now you can see the start of that barn roof. We're just going to mirror that angle over here, so just bringing it up a little bit. And once again, continue that around the side. The hard part is almost over. We're going to just draw in that door. So we want to make sure that door is centered to the peak of our roof here. So I'm going to say I want it about 4 to 5 inches wide. Coming straight up. About halfway up that wall is about how tall I want that barn door to be. And then down on that left side. All right, enough drawing. We're going to go ahead and color it in. Nice long brush strokes from top to bottom. We do have quite a bit of texture here, but let's just add a little bit more. Taking a little bit of black on my brush, even dabble in it to make sure I don't have too much. I'm just going to start from the top and flick down in a couple spots, add in a little bit more variation to the barn. All those red colors kind of creates a shadow from the rooftop later. And there we are. While we have the black, we may as well finish our background, and the rest is going to be the ground on the bottom and even the black inside our barn. So with this brush, just continuing with black, I'm just going to color in just inside that door there. Trying your best to get those straight lines. If not, that's okay. We'll be framing it later with some white, so you'll have time to correct it yet. Again, nice long brush strokes. And once you get that colored in, we're going to continue that black all the way underneath that barn. And we'll have some land kind of bumping up over here on the right side. We want to see some of the land behind that barn. So just maybe add a little wave to it. Maybe it's a little hilly. Just follow that lower right corner, and everything beneath that we're just coloring in black. All right, so that is the last of our background. We're going to let that dry, so we're going to take a little break. Welcome back to Picture This. I was just finishing the background of my barn fall scene. I'm going to start with some black next to create the rooftop and a little bit more detail in my barn before we start the big tree. I'm going to be using that middle-size angular brush and with a little bit of black. Some tips with this brush: I always like to use the thin side to make those thin lines, and I always like to lead with that shorter side. Like this brush because it tends to hold more paint than those really tiny brushes. So I'm going to start with just basically outlining the rooftop, but carrying it out a little bit further once I get down to the wall. Starting from the peak, falling right across the top there, and continuing down. And going just a little bit further, having a little bit of an overhang. And you'll notice the more pressure you press on your brush here, the fatter the brush strokes. And then I'm going to continue for that left side here. And around that edge. All right, we can add a little bit more to the planks of wood on the side of our barn by using that thin side of our brush, really light pressure. I'm just going to flick some black lines starting from up top and coming down. Kind of show that there's separate boards there on our barn. And some of them might get lost in some of those shadows we created earlier, but that's okay. Just so we see it in some spots at least. And even if they're not straight, that's okay. It's a rustic barn then. All right, let's take a break from the barn. We're going to go ahead and start that tree. I'm just going to start with making it a black silhouette, and this tree I wanted to start down here in the lower corner, coming up and framing over my barn. I'm going to start with the tree trunk and just that main branch that goes all the way up, framing it just as I described there. So starting over here, and if it's a little wavy, that's okay. Gives it that more realistic tree look, and bring that branch over just like that. Kind of refine that little end there if you need. Then I'm going to add a little bit of width to my trunk. Go right next to it, maybe about an inch to the right or to the left, and I'm going to follow that, getting closer and closer to that first line as I go up. So right when it starts leaning, I'm going to have it overlap that same brush stroke, and then I'm just going to color in that bottom part of my tree. And with the branches, honestly, you can add them wherever you want, but I always like to think of them as a bunch of Ys. So, starting maybe over here on the right side, I'm going to follow the side of the tree and then angle up and out. Once again, you can continue those around the side of your canvas as well. Continuing that image, and I'm just going to continue adding some medium-sized branches wherever I feel like I want to fill that space. So the next part with our black, we're going to go ahead and just add a little light on our barn. So centered to our door and to that highest peak, I'm going to just start with a circle for the base of my light. With this brush, you can actually make a perfect circle. I just like practice on my palette first, but if you press and then spin it in your hand or your fingertips, you'll end up with the perfect circle every time. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do that again, maybe a few inches down from the top, making sure that I'm going to have room for a sign here too. And then just twirl it around. And then for the rest of my light, I'm just going to draw a straight line down. And then the light is actually just going to be a triangle shape. So angling out to the left and to the right, and then just connect with a little smile. And then color it in. All right, so let's go ahead and clean off our brush now that we're done with our black. All right, now that our brush is clean, we're going to go ahead and start the next part of our barn. That's going to be creating that white trim around our door and for the doors to open to the left and to the right. I'm going to use just a little bit of white and that angular brush, This time I'm going to use the wide side of the brush because it's going to be exactly the width that I want the trim to be. I'm going to just outline that white stripe all the way around the door. So just around the outside here, all the way down. And if you always get a little bit of that wet paint, that's okay. Just wipe it on your paper towel, get a fresh start. I'm going to start with this left side here. And then I'm going to do a white stripe going across the top. Those straight lines. Remember to breathe. I always catch myself holding my breath. And then I'm going to continue that top out to the left and to the right for those doors. So we want these doors to be about half the width of our door as well, making sure that if it is shut, it's shut all the way. So I'm going to take about that rough guess there. Somewhere over here is about how wide I want it to be. Coming over and then straight down. And it's pretty easy for me on the left side. I just have to continue this over because I'm not going to see the left side of that door. And continue that around the edge as well. The last part of the door is to create that little V shape on there. So from this corner, I'm going to meet right to the middle here. And from here, down to that inner corner. And I'm going to do my best to mirror that on this other side here. Just kind of that angle over there. And from this corner up. And once again, continue that around the sides as well. Now while I have the white, I can create that sign above my door, trying to keep it centered. I'm going to keep those very jagged edges to the left and to the right, so just let the hairs of the brush do the work for us. So somewhere in the center here, maybe just as wide as the door, I'm going to have this a crooked sign. Going up, notice that jagged line there, and I'm going to continue this down a couple more times until I got the height sign that I want. And if it's a little see-through, that's okay, it gives it more that rustic look. Even if it's a little wavy, it's an old barn. And there we are. I'm going to go ahead and just prep a light gray to bring out that light a little bit. So I'm going to take a little bit of white to the side and just take a little bit of black, mix that in. Just kind of a good contrast between the white, the black, kind of in between there. And with the light or the thin side of the brush, I'm just going to add a highlight to the right side of the light here and the base, maybe one through the middle too. Now I want lights to be in my barn as well. So I'm going to have kind of those Christmas lights hanging across, and very light pressure. I'm just going to make a couple swooping down, maybe like an X, just like so. All right, let's go ahead and clean off our brush. All right, for the next part, we're going to create those pumpkins since it is a pumpkin barn. So we are going to prep that orange starting with a big scoop of this mustard yellow. And we're going to separate that somewhere on our palette. Then I'm going to take a little bit of red, just a little bit at a time, and mix that in until we have kind of a burnt orange color. So I'd say something like that is pretty good. This color is a little see-through, so I always like to add just a little bit of white on the corner of my brush and mix that in. Plus this will brighten it up on that dark background that we have. With the pumpkins, I'm going to make a nice big one right by my door here and maybe just a little one down in the corner. So basically it's like two C's that meet together in the middle. I'm going to start kind of overlapping this door a little bit. Just a big C, and then I'm going to make a C on the other side so that they're meeting together. Then coloring it in, nice long brush strokes up and down. And then I'm going to make my next pumpkin down here, maybe a little bit smaller. Same deal. You got a C, another C, and then coloring it in same way from top and bottom. Then at the bottom, I'm going to use a little bit of that brown, that burnt sienna, and flick up from the bottom. And this is just going to create a little bit of a shadow. Maybe a little bit at the top too. If it's a little see-through, it might help cover that up a little bit. And same goes for the little guy. All right, so we're going to let that dry again, so we'll take a little break. Welcome back to Picture This. We're working on a nice fall scene, so we're going to start all the fall colors in that tree. I'm going to start with a little bit of this golden yellow and, actually, most importantly, my Bad Hair Day brush. I love this brush because it gives it some cool texture and it's rough, so it's really easy to stipple with that cool texture. With that gold, I'm just going to stipple away. And I always like to take a step back, make sure it looks balanced throughout. Some other fall colors, we may add some of that brown color, so some of this burnt sienna. Don't even have to clean your brush, and do the same thing. All right, then we're going to go ahead and clean off our brush. We're going to continue with our Bad Hair Day brush with that green. We're now going to add the grass. So with the grass, I always like to get just a little bit of green on there, so I even dabble it on my palette. And it's always going to be quick little flicks up. So really light pressure, you want to pull it up on the canvas as you pull it away from the canvas. And that's going to naturally make the grass happen. I might just start back here with smaller grass because it is farther away, and making sure that I know right where that tree trunk is. So I'm just going to kind of frame around there. And as I come down, I'm actually making that grass a little bit longer too. As it is closer to us, it will appear larger. I'm going to leave a little gap here for a path into our barn. So I might just skip that area and continue on this left side here. And continue around that left side as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush. And because it's fall, grass isn't that green, so we might just add a little bit of dead grass in there. Using some of that mustard, just a little bit, and doing the same thing. Just add a little bit of that throughout. This adds a little bit of color to it. If you want to bring a little bit of red in there, you can always do that. Have fun a little bit. And with this brush, I may as well just continue using it, just wipe it off on the side. With a little bit of this brown, I'm going to add a little bit of color to the path. So just kind of zigzagging back and forth, allowing some of that black to show through again. So just flicking back and forth, then we'll clean our brush. The rest of the painting is a lot of little details. So I'm going to use my tiniest brush, and I'm going to use a little bit of that brown, that burnt sienna, and add a little bit to the tree. Adding a little bit more highlight to one side or the other, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Just be consistent as you go up. I'm going to choose the left side here. Just kind of adding little waves, almost like S's, going up that left side. Just makes it less flat looking. And maybe to some of the little thicker branches up here. I don't think doing all of them is quite necessary. Maybe some of the areas that it might go in front of that black roof might be good. Then I'm going to just dip right into the black. Since it's a dark color, won't interfere at all. So with that black, I'm going to just add those little creases to my pumpkin. It's like a football in the middle. Really light pressure, and maybe one more crease on this left side, right side. Have a little bit coming from the bottom there. Maybe I'll outline a little bit in front of that barns, brings it out a little bit. And continuing the same thing for that little guy. And we can add those little stems. So this one's just kind of like a triangle right up there at the top. This guy might get a little lost, but I'll still draw it out and maybe go back with some brown to add a little bit of a highlight to it. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush again. Got those little lights in my barn, so I'm going to go ahead and make a nice light yellow. I'm just going to use that mustard yellow, separate some to the side, and a big scoop of white. Mix that together. And the lights, I just like to make little spirals. So I start with a dot and just a swoop around it. And I'm just going to make a dotted pattern all the way across underneath each of those strings to start. And then I'll go back with a little swoop or like a ring, a spiral, just whatever kind of works to give it that look that it's glowing. And I can add a little bit down on the ground, show that it's lighting up that room. And then I'll clean my brush. All right, so final steps with the black. I'm gonna use that black and just shadow some of these white trim areas in the door. Just on the bottom side, this brings it out a little bit. And across the top here. Also going to outline the bottom of my sign to create that shadow there. So really light pressure. Sometimes I like to rest my pinky. I think it makes it a lot easier. And maybe a zigzag on that right side. And this is where you get to customize what you want written on your sign. I'm just going to do pumpkins 5 cents. They are super sale. Really light pressure. Write it out. Always make sure though when you're writing that you have room for all of the letters. Otherwise, you have to get creative. Some people like to start in the middle of the word. Just remember the canvas doesn't have spell check. And 5 cents. Take a step back. Maybe I'll add a little bit to this guy here. And I think that concludes my barn scene here. When you are done, an artist always signs their work. So make sure to sign it. When I sign, I always like to sign it in the lower right corner. So it's out of the way, and it's always fun to date at least the year that you did it. Well, thank you for following along with me, Mercedes Faub, at the Captured on Canvas studio. We'll see you next time on Picture This.